I don't want to help my boyfriend buy a house plus update. I've been with Mark for 2 years now. When we got into a relationship, we discussed what we wanted, marriage, kids, but we haven't really talked about taking the next step yet. Mark's dream has been to own his own house. He has been saving up for it, but because we live in a medium to high bull city, it's not going as fast as he'd have liked. Yesterday, he asked me if I would consider covering rent and utilities for a year while he aggressively saves. Frankly, I'm not 100% on board. I told him this. I asked him if he has thought about marriage. He said that it might be too soon, and I agree, but that he definitely loved me and saw a future with me. I asked him if the house would completely be his own, or if we'd buy it together, and he said it'd completely be his own because we aren't married yet, and buying a house together would be risky. I asked him if he'd pay me back his share, and he said, eventually. I have inherited a house from my grandmother in a high COL city, which I'm currently renting out. I do not want to lose it, and when I inherited it, Mark and I agreed that if we ever head towards marriage, he's fully on board to sign a prenup that ensures he has no claim on it. He stated that he'd include this house in the prenup because it'd be his own. Here's my problem. Mark has not done anything for my grandma's house. Neither have I. The house was in perfect condition. I rented it out within months of finalizing the inheritance. But he literally has no reason to stake a claim. But by covering rent plus utilities, I will be providing monetary assistance to him, and if we break up, I'd have lost quite a bit of money for seemingly no reason. In a way, I'd feel entitled to a part of his house. Is this a selfish way to think? I love him, but I don't want to assume this risk, especially because our future together is not clear. I asked him if he'd consider moving in with his parents, and I'll find a roommate temporarily for a year, so he could save up the money. This way, I wouldn't have to spend more than I need to. He'd achieve his goal, and we can still continue our relationship. But he said I was being incredibly selfish and untrustworthy because it would be our home, just not on paper. That I clearly didn't see a future with him. And now he's not talking to me. A part of me feels like this relationship is doomed. Is there a way to salvage this? Update. After a few days, I proposed the following to Mark. I'd front him the money, instead of paying for his rent for 12 plus months, he needed for the down payment on his house. He'd calculate what % that money would be of the total cost of the house. The houses he was considering were in the $500,000 range. I would own that % of the house. Not 50 to 50 or anything, just the % I paid for. If he pays me back within a year, without any interest, I'd remove my name from the deed and he'd own his house completely. If he doesn't pay me back within the year, he'd have to pay me whatever my % was worth a year down the line, if he intended on owning the house fully. Otherwise, I was happy to have a 10% claim on the house forever. So basically, if I fronted him $50,000 for a $500,000 house, I'd own 10%. I would charge him no interest for the first year. However, if he doesn't pay me back, then he'd need to pay me 10% of whatever the house was worth the next year. So if the house is $600,000, he'd owe me $60,000 and so on. To be honest, this isn't that great a deal, because real estate prices are nuts right now and are increasing pretty dramatically. So this is literally worse than taking out a loan. I proposed this in the hopes that he'd decline, and we'd just go back to never having discussed this at all. To my surprise, he immediately agreed and said that he'd get a lawyer to draft an agreement, even though he hadn't finalized the house. Well, okay then. He had it ready in 2 days. He was incredibly pushy about me signing it, but I wanted to review the whole thing with my lawyer, so I didn't care. Turns out, there were some super shady clauses added, with my contribution being termed as a gift and not a loan. I'm not going to go into the details, but my lawyer basically said that this agreement was super problematic and would cause all sorts of issues down the line. He drafted an alternative and sent it to Mark. Mark did not sign it. He was adamant that I sign the original agreement and wouldn't tell me why. He got increasingly angry, became kind of violent, which was the first time, and I was very surprised/scared, and called me a bitch for not trusting him and for reducing our relationship to a transaction. After 2 whole days of this, of emotional manipulation and gaslighting, I decided that I no longer trusted or cared for this man, and there is no way in hell I can continue to be in a relationship with him. So yeah, I'm out of that relationship, y'all, and my money's all mine. All I can feel is peace. Story 2. AITA for ruining a pregnancy announcement by telling the woman she may have taken the wrong test? Obligatory sorry for the formatting. I'm on mobile, and it's my first post on here. My husband and I, 30M, 30F, recently invited 8 friends for lunch and were asked if we could also include a new couple, Doug and Sasha, both 30s. We have never met them, but everyone who was invited has, so we said sure. At one point Sasha needed to use the restroom, and I told her to use the master since the other bathroom was occupied. I was helping my husband finish with food when Sasha came out of the master bawling and holding something in her hand. At first I thought she hurt herself, but she said something to Doug that caused him to drop to his knees, cry, and begin kissing her stomach. All of our friends begin screaming, jumping, and crying. It was insane. Finally, Sasha tells my husband and I that she is pregnant. Of course, we congratulate both she and Doug and gave them a bag for the test, their request. I will admit I did find it odd that she brought a pregnancy test and took it at a complete stranger's house, but I did not say that. Once everyone sat down to eat, Sasha said, "OP, I hope you don't mind that I used one of your pregnancy tests. I just saw them and had to." I responded, confused, "I don't have pregnancy tests." Sasha says, "Yes, in your drawer." I asked Sasha if she meant the blue box in the back of my lower left drawer that was closed. She seemed to realize I was pointing out that she basically snooped and sheepishly said the box said pregnancy for pregnancy test. I said, "Sasha, the brand is Pregmate and those are ovulation tests. I do not own pregnancy tests. Did you take an ovulation test?" Doug freaked the absolute F out at me, saying his wife was not an idiot and can read a box. He insisted Sasha get the test out and show me that I'm wrong. Sasha refused, saying she didn't need to prove anything to a complete stranger and insisted they leave immediately. One of the couples thought Doug and Sasha acted ridiculous. The other three couples thought I should have pulled Sasha aside to discuss my concerns and said I was an asshole for saying something in front of everyone. Honestly, the whole situation caught me off guard and everything happened so quickly. The whole thing was bizarre and confusing. I just didn't have time to put the pieces together mentally before asking about the ovulation tests. Also, I found out later through one of our friends that Sasha did take an ovulation test, and she is not pregnant. Date. I do not meet the criteria for a standalone update. I'm not sure if anyone will see this. In case anyone does, first, let me thank anyone who took time to read, comment, or give an award. I am very, very, very grateful for the feedback. Based on the responses, today I called up one of my friends who was present and took Doug and Sasha's side, and basically told her I was owed an explanation for WTF happened. Here is what I found out. Apparently my friends have no DNS for much longer than I realized. This is strange because they have never talked about DNS before this. Doug constantly brings up wanting to have a baby every time they see him. One night Sasha confided in the women that Doug divorced his first wife because she was old and infertile. She was the same age as Doug. Doug married Sasha because she was young and fertilized. Sasha heard him tell this to some friends. At that point, DNS had been trying to conceive for over a year, and Sasha was concerned that Doug was going to leave her. They, the women in my friend group, tried to convince Sasha that this is not a healthy relationship, but she insisted she was happy and just needed to get pregnant. They gave her the courage to seek medical assistance, which she had previously been too scared to do. Sasha ended up getting prescribed fertility meds at her appointment and was scared to test with Doug. So they told her they would come to her house to be with her when she tested and be a support system for her. The day DNS were at my house was after Sasha's first round of meds, and she was in the window to test. She had not planned on testing but had a light bulb moment when I told her to use my bathroom. Sasha only took the test and did not steal anything. When the test came back with 2 lines, Sasha was in shock and immediately wanted to share with her husband and support system. Doug was mortified by the ordeal and DNS have been fighting a lot. Sasha has been badmouthing me to anyone who will listen. She believes I ruined her marriage and embarrassed her and Doug because my husband and I were threatened by DNS and the friendships they were building. Sasha told my girlfriends they shouldn't spend time with me anymore because who can be friends with someone who treats a guest in their own home that way? My friends felt they had to take Sasha's side in the moment because they knew how important the pregnancy was to her marriage. I am back on good terms with my friends. Also, yes, my husband and I have been privately trying to get pregnant. I am pissed that now my friends are aware. Thank you to my fellow TTCers, past and present, who mentioned this invasion of privacy or gave well wishes. You all touched my heart.